The Buick screeched through the blackness, its brakes squealing with every curve. Besides that illuminated by its lights, the set sun turned trees into foreboding monoliths. The events of recent weeks and months seemed to be illustrated by the landscape, and the Buick pushed forward with no concern for the consequences of traveling this territory. Shadowy forces of evil conspired to consume the state, and I began to wonder if the darkness would be permanent or if the sun would rise again. The monoliths had shaken my faith in human nature, evil, unrepentant, and totally convinced of their own moral authority. The vague shapes passing by, memories of their former selves, reminded me the sad truth. They were representative of humanity. They had lost their form and their way, but they could become themselves once again, providing the sun rose. On my dashboard, the radio blared. NPR talked about how dogs evolved from wolves, and while not a subject I was uninterested in, was promptly ignored. This was election night, and I needed to know for myself if the sun would rise again on Mississippi. The issue caused my nerves to crack and hiss with electricity, my hair standing on end as I raced across the black roads of Union County. I had made enemies lately with the kinds of people who would carry out their threats without so much as a guilty twinge because they honestly believed they were ultimately right and justified. Tonight, they hoped this was true as much as I hoped it wasn't. Could I feel safe? Possibly not, though I suspect no one ever really is. After all, I was fighting for a cause I strongly believed in, an issue that affects the entire human race in Mississippi, and I had to be sure that enough people who, while they don't necessarily agree with me, could see through the talking points to make a well-informed decision. I regretted some of the things I said to Roger Wicker the day before, but certainly not all of what I said. The Good Old Boys Club had decided that their idea of a press conference would be to take questions from a consortium of hate groups recognized by the Southern Poverty Law Center. I wouldn't let that stand. Phil Bryant, Roger Wicker, and Alan Nunnally would answer questions, but they wouldn't just be high-fly softballs into right field. I made a mistake. I used my platform to ask a hard question, interrupting what passes for a press conference in Mississippi, though that's no excuse. The question was deflected, and I made remarks that I regret. Although the American Family Association would have had their way, that's the only part anyone would have ever heard. And while I apologize for those words, my hot-handed anger is no excuse. Though, to be fair, and on that point, I and those sharing my view had been called Nazis several times over, and Satan by Lieutenant Governor Phil Bryant. Quite a bit worse than retard. And it became clear that the entire meeting was a sham, honestly. They had no intention of looking at the issue from any perspective than the one that they thought would win. One other person who was not on their side asked a member of the American Family Association why he would limit IVF, considering he had 2 children by IVF himself. Nothing's fair, he said. It then occurred to me that these people might actually be evil. I hated the thought. The entire event had shaken my basic faith in humanity. Many people were reeling from the events of the afternoon, and I was one of them. I sped down the highway, turning up the radio. The results were in, with 64% of the precincts reporting no, 85%, yes, 42. They might have been right that nothing was fair, but it looked like Mississippians sat and decided that was any reason everything should be made unfair.